You're watching The Blueprint.
Welcome everyone to the E&I podcast, the Blueprint podcast, where we share the experience of valuable people from Silicon Valley, and we share this knowledge to the people. We have David Vik today with us. I'm going to give him a couple of minutes to present himself and to present his book, The Culture Secret. So, nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Well, I tell you what, my name is David Vik, and I started out as a chiropractor in the Silicon Valley for 22 years, and had a great culture and built one of the most successful chiropractic clinics and invested in different companies. And that led me to Zappos and then Riviera Partners and then some other companies. And with the model that I created back in 1984 for the clinic, which was basically the foundation for the success of the clinic, it's been incredible, the ride and the success that all the companies that I've worked with has had. And so I just wanted to share it with the world. Anybody who has a company, if you set up the culture right and have everything aligned, it's going to be a success, because the truth is 90% of all the startups and new companies, they fail. And venture-backed companies, like 80% of them fail, and probably at least 30% of them fail within the first year because they're not set up basically customer-centric. So we have the model here, and we're going to go through it today. So if you open a company or you want to work at a company, it's going to give you all the information you need to have a super culture that will allow the company to reach its full potential. So that's what we're here today to do.
So we're going to ask you a couple of questions, business related, culture related, and innovation in general.
Yeah.
So I think Guillermo is going to start with some questions, and then we're going to move.
Awesome. Okay. So I was thinking about leadership and about how culture has human characteristics, and how those characteristics start at the leadership of the organization. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if you had any preferred styles of leadership or management that you had for business that you invest in or you find being more successful.
Yeah, everything comes from the top. So the leadership has to be strong in what they're doing, which is the vision, why they're doing it, which is the purpose, and the values with what the company values. So that has to be peppered in on a consistent basis to get everybody aligned to the throughput of what the company either produces or sells, or a product, knowledge, or service, just to go ahead and what they deliver. And it needs to be leadership, and I wish a lot of companies would cut out the word management, because, I mean, Guillermo, you like to be managed?
I don't like to be managed.
No. How about Femke? You like to be managed?
No, I don't like to manage.
No, I don't think anybody likes to be managed. A lot of companies think they own, the employees. They tell them what to do and so forth. And in all reality, they pretty much predicate where the person lives, what car he drives, with the amount of money they pay, all that stuff, when he's going to go ahead and elevate up with a raise, all that. They control everything. But these people are living human beings, and they have families, they have kids, they have wants, they have needs, but they're not really treated like that. So the leadership would really get to know the employees themselves as a whole. And, if people don't know, okay, you can cut that out. I'll remember Tom Mendoza's. But anyway. Okay.
And I'm going to introduce myself in every question. I'm Jan Fuato.
I'm an entrepreneurship student here in Menlo College. And I want to ask you, as we are talking about culture and how important is it for business, mm-hmm. Let's say you have a vision and you find a problem and a solution. How much time do you think you need to find a co-founder, a person that complements you in that business for your lifetime? Because a co-founder is probably for a lifetime. And how do you accomplish establishing that new vision to new people in the company?
Real important. The vision and purpose has to be articulated in like 6 words or less, so it can be remembered and repeated over and over. And as far as, if you're a founder and come up with a vision and purpose of like, this is what we do and this is why we do it, you just have to get somebody who can go ahead and not have the same skills as you, but other skills that can manage other parts of the business and is in alignment with the vision and purpose. And if you have to tweak a little bit to align it, that's great. But if you have a certain vision and purpose and the co-founder that has adjacent business skills as you, and he's not in line or she's not in line with what you're going to, deliver, it's not going to work out.
So you say the better these people are into the vision that you have, the more success you're going to have probably, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Instead of being managed, being also a leader, but in your field, right?
Exactly. You just got to get somebody, and that's the same. And a lot of, the truth is, a lot of co-founders don't work out over time. A lot of partnerships don't work out just because things go different ways and so forth. So if you can get really a good alignment on what the vision and purpose is and say, hey, yeah, we can do it together. This is my specialty. This is yours. It'll be a great fit. That works out really well. Yeah.
Talking about, now that we're talking about vision and purpose, could you briefly explain what vision and purpose are and what is the purpose of each? Because I think it's something that gets blurry for people.
Yeah.
Something that they have issues explaining. Sometimes you see these 2-paragraph long mission statements and they think that's their vision and purpose. But as you just said, it has to be something short. So how could you explain to people in simple words what a vision and a purpose is?
The vision is what we do, and the purpose is why we do it. And the values are what you support in the company, what the values are. And they basically have to go ahead and help and all be in alignment with what you're delivering, producing, making, all that kind of stuff. So they all have to be in alignment. And one of the big things in the essence of a culture with the vision, purpose, and values is you have to be unique to be successful. So you have to have at least, I would say, in my model, at least 3 unique or wow factors. And the wow factors should be customer-centric. And if they're not customer-centric, then you're not reaching the biggest market in the world, which are people. And that's really what you want to do. You want to be customer-centric. We all have, Femke, you told me about when you make a phone call to some companies, right? They're not customer-centric. So that frustrates you, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And they keep you on the phone.
For 15 minutes with a little music.
Right.
I don't like that.
Right. So you basically want to have 3 unique or wow factors. And for the company, to find those unique or wow factors, you look at the market you're in, and then you see what the biggest pain points or the biggest problems in that ecosystem is. What's broken in that ecosystem, and create a solution for it. And that's what we've done with all the companies I've worked with. And so when it comes out, you're giving the people something that's a solution for what they've been frustrated for. So for that one call center you call, if they pick up the phone on the first ring and don't have you wait at all, that's a solution for what Femke gets frustrated with. And so that's one. And you can pick up other things that are broken within the industry or the ecosystem for your specific company. And those are the ones that are basically the how, along with being customer-centric in other ways. But that's the how. So you got the vision, this is what we do, purpose, this is how we do it, and then you have the wow or unique factors is the how. And I don't know if you people have ever heard the saying, you give them the what, but then you sell them the how.
Yeah.
Okay.
So another one that is, if the why is very powerful, if the why is very powerful, the how becomes very easy.
Exactly. People have to have a purpose. And in the book, that's the number one thing that employees want. They want a purpose in what they do. Because sometimes you probably worked at a company and then you're working on a project, and all of a sudden they go, no, we're not going to use it. It's like, right? Come on, man. I want to have my work being, acknowledged and recognized and put out there. Otherwise, it's deflating for the person, and they can't stay engaged. So that's perfectly right. Absolutely.
Yesterday we were in an event where the CEO of NVIDIA was talking, and he was just saying that he didn't keep any information in the top of the CEO and then had one-on-one meetings. He didn't have any one-on-one meetings. He just shared the information to all the company because he knew that vision comes from everyone and not only from the CEO.
Yep.
So it's basically what you're saying, and I just wanted to say that the importance of this for people to know.
Yeah, it comes from, it's everybody. Like we talked about earlier, the culture is the company. It's the people. It's the living, breathing part of the company. So if no employees came at all to work for a month, you wouldn't have a company. And so they have to know, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is the unique factors that we're going to really focus on. And then so the engineering department will focus on definitely this solution that we came up, for your product, service or knowledge. And the HR part, will work on that. And all the different departments know what to do. And the cool thing about having a culture like that where everybody knows is you don't have to tell them what to do because they already know what needs to be done. And they'll come up with something way better than you can even say yourself or say, this is, I want you to do this. Well, these people are the experts that you hired. Let them do the magic. And they have to know what's going on, and then they can go ahead and produce stuff you can't even believe that's out there. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Once you get to that delegation point when everybody's just good at doing their job, they don't need to be managed, like you said. That's the best part of a business. I'm wondering, like, for what I'm understanding, the best way to get your team to do this, like in leadership, is to give them information and like be really clear about what the purpose is. But once they have that information, let's say they really understand what the culture is there any ways that you found that it's easier for them to take that in and start implementing it and start working with it, working together with the same culture?
Yeah. Sometimes, you have, let's say if you have 10 values, people forget them. And we've had that problems with companies. And, one company I was with, we made the mouse pad with the core values, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really good because you see it there every day, and then, when you have, you have a daily intranet, all the employees will log in. It's good to have everybody's bio, where they're from, their whole life. So you can figure out people, and so you can build relationships. That's what it's all about. So you can have stuff like that go on, and that really, really helps. And then you want to have during that intranet or daily messages. I used to put them out for different companies, but it's basically you could pepper in the vision and purpose, and you can shine a light on what you want more of in a company. So if you have a value of doing the right thing, you just say, hey, Diego, yesterday was working on this project and he solved this solution for this customer. And so we want to go ahead and acknowledge and recognize Diego for our number 4 core value, doing the right thing. And then it's like you give them a $50 bonus or whatever. Or you don't have to give them any bonus, it's acknowledgement and recognition. And everybody wants to get acknowledged and recognized. So they start stepping up and go, well, I'm going to make sure I do these core values. And then people recognize, you know what I mean? So it's just you want to go ahead and recognize and acknowledge people for what the culture is made of, and then it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And then when people come into the culture and they're not kind of aligning to the culture right away because they haven't really memorized any of it, is if they're doing something goofy, they'll go, hey man, we don't really do that. We do this over here, if you don't mind. Just, and they'll go, oh, okay, cool. Right? Like a house that says take off your shoes before you come in, and you come in with your boots on, and they go, hey man, just take them off. This is what we do here. That's all.
I love the word recognizing, because a lot of times we think about rewarding an employee and we see it as a trade-off. Okay, I give you something to reward you, but then I'm losing money or whatever, or time. Mm-hmm. But if you just recognize people, that you don't have to spend anything on it. We just have to pay attention and be a good leader, and then that will lead them to the same benefits that if you give them an award. Yeah, love that.
Right on, yeah. It works good. And if you open it up to all the employees, it's like, hey, for the acknowledgement recognition, we're going to have a daily post. And so if you see anybody doing that, go ahead and just write in what you saw, what you did, and then send it in. And so they don't, the HR or whoever pilots that program doesn't have to do all the legwork because it's the employees recognizing their fellow employees. And it's like that kind of gets more and more, you know?
For businesses, there are some businesses that have an easy access to create a great culture, and some businesses that don't have it as easy, right?
Yes.
If you have a product or a service that is really simple, maybe it's very difficult to get a culture out of that product or service. So would it be better to build for a business first the culture and then the product?
But sometimes it could be, but then you don't, as long as you know what the product is, then you can build the culture. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, if the culture is so powerful, you know that people are going to engage with you in that culture. That you can even change lives with that culture, but you don't even have a product or a service.
Yeah.
But you know it's something good for this right specific time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's even better to have a product or a service, have a powerful culture. And honestly, from the attention of people, you can get sales anywhere in services, in products, from that specific culture.
Yeah, I'm sure. So if you have already an existing culture, that would work. Then you put adjacent business models and products into it. But let's say you create this great culture, you and the co-founder, and then all of a sudden your product you got is paper plates. No one's really probably too excited about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's nothing differentiating about it. And so there's certain things that I would get the product or service or knowledge that you're going to sell, or all three of them, and then get really excited about it because you're getting somebody in there that's really excited, and then get people to help you out.
Okay, yeah, because with businesses, there's a lot of competition right now. So basically what differentiates you is culture, and not the product anymore that much.
Not that much. And the thing is, if you can't differentiate your product from everything out there, you're going to sell it by the pound. And that's what you don't want in business, because you can't build a brand that way. So it has to be unique, different. It could be eco-friendly and in the right way, not just saying it. And so there could be a lot of different differentiators. And so we just want to go ahead and drive those unique or wow factors home, the three that will differentiate this paper cup from anyone out there. And then someone could get really excited about it. You know what I mean? 10 cents for every pack of 20 goes to this in the rainforest or whatever. So you can really do something even if you don't make the product.
How important is being unique? Not only to have a positive influence, but also just to be remembered. Because a lot of times we find ourselves making decisions by reasons that we don't even comprehend, maybe our subconscious, but maybe you just remember that this paper cup had this feature that maybe it's like completely useless. A lot of people will like buy it again or just choose it or recommend it even.
It's actually science. And I wrote in the book too that you have a portion of your brain, the amygdala, the limbic system. And basically what happens if you have something that is more than so-so, like if you look at something and you see the unique factors and you go, wow, that creates an emotion. And that section of your brain has memory and emotion. And what happens, that gets logged in there. And when you continue the pattern, like you buy this, repetitively, pretty soon it becomes your subconscious, and you don't even think about it, that this cup is your default where you go every time. You don't, you grab it and you buy it because you don't even look at the other ones, because it's in the part of your brain where you always go to things that are good for you and keep coming back. And again, you avoid the things that have bad, you don't think of certain companies first, right? Because you've had bad experiences with them, because they create emotion where you get frustrated and you get upset. So that emotion comes. So there's a lot of companies out there that are hardwiring negative emotions with the customers. And that's why companies go belly up so quick. The average lifespan is like 10 years for most of the companies that even make it, and before they used to be 50 years. Yeah.
So I have a question. Because you're a chiropractor, actually, so you're a doctor.
Yeah.
So during your education, did you have like a psychology class? And if you did so, did you? Let's start there.
We
Let's start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you learned about positive reinforcement, right?
Yeah.
So how did you apply that in your culture right now, positive reinforcement?
Just by the sheer actions of creating the unique factors.
So how would you explain that further?
Well, it just having the unique factors that where if you do something and people say, wow, and it's customer centric, you go, wow, that just patterns yourself, and that makes everything, it kind of continues in the same way where you just keep on wanting to go back to it. So that's just the psychology of it, and being customer centric. Like I did a talk here at Menlo a couple weeks ago, and these students were here, and it was fantastic. And they listened, and Diego, I didn't know where to park and so forth, and so he put a placard out, reserved a spot. He goes, "Don't worry about it. I'll meet you at the car, and there's a reserved parking spot." And he goes, "I'll walk you into where we're gonna tape today." And so basically, he's wowing me. He just doesn't say, "Show up, look for a parking spot, and then try to find us," right? So he's wowing me. So right now, Diego's a good guy, man.
Unique wow factors, but this is a team effort. We're planning this.
Love it. Well, everybody did it. So that's just, and so the thing is, I'm excited to be here, and if you guys need something, and that's one of the big things. If you guys need something, call me, right? You've already wowed me and buffed me out. And that's the way when you treat a customer, it's a process of reciprocation. If you give them the liberty and give them good stuff, what they do is they don't take advantage of it, and they tell friends. Okay. Some people take advantage of it, but it's very, very few. Like at Zappos, take as many shoes as you want, try whatever you want, and come back. And there's some people that abuse it, but for the most part, the people, whoever get more shoes, they actually have a bigger buy rate. And after a while, they just don't abuse that service, because they go, "Man, you guys are so cool and you're buffing me out, so I won't abuse it." That type of thing. So you got to trust the process on that.
Let me follow up on the wow factor, because what I'm seeing in the wow factor is there's two main factors. One of them has to be a positive feeling of, okay, this is great, this is valuable. But also I'm feeling like a lot of it has to be a surprise, right? Because the wow also comes from a surprise. And those surprises also is what sticks to you in your subconscious. So what do you think is the importance of the factor being something that's valuable? Because a lot of times there's a bigger trade-off on the value. But how I'm feeling, I'm not sure, I don't know if it's true, but if you can just find ways to create unexpected things, that will also have a wow factor on the customer.
Right. Okay. That's a really good question, because the wow factor, after a while, it kind of comes every day because you get used to it. But what happens in the companies I work with, I suggest, and some do, some don't, but you create a flywheel. And what you do is you take some of the profits and you keep reinvesting into the fixed cost of experience. And so, like Zappos, we first had it a week and then 5-day delivery. And then when they'd get a 5-day delivery notice after they'd make a purchase, we'd say, "Hey, you're going to get your shoes in 5 days." And then immediately the next day, it's like, "Hey, you got upgraded, so you'll get it in 3 days." And so they go, "Wow, that's good." But the thing is, the time kept shrinking over time. So over time, they were wowed, but then kind of like with Amazon, you get wowed, but now it comes the same day or in an hour and a half.
Already, right? Yeah.
And so it just keeps getting better and better, the fixed cost experience or the wow factors. You keep making them better and better. You don't just put them out there and keep them the same the whole time. Try to just get them better and better over time.
It's more difficult to wow people now than it was before, like maybe 10 years ago or 20 or 30. Yeah.
Yeah, because free shipping, everybody has free shipping. Now,
but in everything.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah.
In the book, you say this relates to that. A recurrent topic in the book is that companies must interact compassionately with disillusioned men and women.
Yeah.
Is this what you mean? What you're talking about right now? That people don't expect to be treated right.
Right.
And at least in my opinion,
Yeah.
I think we can all agree on this, but when you go into a new company, buy something, a service or product, the first thing that you're looking out for is, how am I being taken advantage of?
Yeah.
It has to be one way they're taking advantage of me.
Yeah.
And that's become common,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
how can you elaborate on that, on interacting compassionately
Yeah.
with people?
Well, it's like you're doing the right thing. And it's employees and the customers. That's why when I went to Zappos, I was a coach. I worked with all the employees. We did 30-day goal setting. I got to know everybody. I knew where they lived, who they lived with, all that kind of stuff. Got them to know as a person. Okay, so that's so important, because employees are disillusioned with being, employed with most employers. And so if you treat the employees right and buff them out and treat them like they're special, which they really are, and they're part of your company, they're going to help it. If you treat them like gold, like you treat your customers, you treat your employees that way, and in transition, they're going to go ahead and treat the customers that way. You can't hammer the disillusion or keep them disillusioned as your employees and have them come up with great technology to serve the customers, or great service to serve the customers. So it first starts with all the staff and the employees, because they're the core of your company. So they've been disillusioned by almost every company they've worked with. And so you got to treat them right, and then pretty soon they're going to create your company, and it's going to be a lot better that way, and they'll treat your customers right.
So in both ways, starts with your
Both
employees,
ways, yeah.
and then that's going to translate to how they treat customers, basically.
Exactly. And just to bring that a little bit wider, there's 4 people in the company. You want to have employees, you have customers, you have investors, and you have partners. A lot of times the partners and vendors are really hammered by the companies. But if you could wow them to the 4 different prongs of the company, you really, really, really start to soar. Very, very important. So you can't just wow your customers, hammer your employees and partners and investors. And as an investor, a lot of times I've given money and it's like, you don't hear from them at all. Nothing. It's like, until they say, hey, we're going to go ahead and dissolve the company. It's like, beautiful, man. Thanks for calling me. Thanks for doing the right thing.
So in that similar vein, in kind of like a company's life cycle perspective, and you could use Zappos as a lens to approach it from, but essentially, Bill Gates, all these billionaires now that started these huge companies, they're notorious for being just ruthless leaders early on. So my question stems from, how much do you have to adapt your culture, and maybe even from the get-go, build your culture to be adapted as you move through the stages of a business's life cycle? Because Apple, the culture it exists with now, I don't even think would recognize itself
Right.
in 1998, 2000, right? That the culture is such a difference.
Yeah.
How much of that is just riding high and growing, and how much of that is also just changes in management, or changes in the people that fundamentally are working there?
Yeah. That's a hard question. I see it in my eyes that it's just, a lot of it is just, the bigger you get, the more pressure, the more investors, and the quarterly report. You just got to keep hammering on that. And Amazon, for years they said they don't make any money. Everybody's just saying they're not a company, but they kept investing in the fixed cost experience. They have a flywheel there, and they're one of the biggest companies in the world right now because of it. And so that's probably just political and money driven, but you don't have to be that way if you're a founder sitting with a company. You don't even have to go public if you don't want. Or you can have a bakery down the street that does totally unique breads, and different things, and takes care of their employees and all that kind of stuff. Gives them like 6 weeks a year vacation, and just a lot of different stuff, perks that they can buff out their employees, and then they'll make the best breads and pastries and all that kind of stuff that you can even think about, and then align the culture and then keep it as a mom and pop, because mom and pops are like 90% of America as far as in the businesses. You think it's all the corporations, but they're not. It's a lot of the mom and pops, which I've had a lot of them come through my office at Zappos, at least 100 a day, that and big companies. But a lot of them have read the book and emailed me and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and thank you so much. And because a lot of people that came through my office, they just said, wow, this is cool. The desks are decorated and ping pong tables, and I want a culture too, but it's not that. That's just stuff. And so that's why I wrote the book, to have everybody understand that it's the vision, purpose, values, and the unique factors, and then being everything around that customer-centric. And you'll totally increase tenfold your chance of success with the company and longevity.
So we've talked about like customer well-being and employee well-being, but I'm wondering, how do you measure and nurture employee well-being and engagement development? How do you measure it?
I guess it's hard to measure. There are certain things you can do as quantify and qualify, but just the manager, or the leader within the group who's leading the people, just sits down and I think I've been in companies where like every 6 months they just say, hey, how do you think you're doing? And ask the employee how they're doing. And then they would say, okay, this is what I think. So what do you think is the best path forward? And it's like a mutual agreement, you know what I mean? And they're not like, you do this or you're fired, and you're not doing this way, you're not doing this way, you're not doing this well. And the guy's saying, well, no one told me to, and you know what I mean? There's no real vision, and I don't know really what we're building here and all that kind of stuff. So it's just basically get to know your employees, and you shouldn't have like 50 employees in a company. They should be more, grouped up, maybe 10, 8 per leader or lead.
Okay, I think we are all agreeing that treating your employees right is very important. So I have a little bit of a controversial take. I know we all heard about how the customer is always right. Yeah. Oftentimes you find yourself with, especially in leadership positions, with a client being in a discussion or in a disagreement with a customer. And I always thought, like, why, if I have a business, would I rather get one customer, just tell them you're right, doesn't matter what my employee says, which who works here I know is probably right because he knows the ways of what's going on. Like, why would some people prefer telling the employee hey, he's wrong and the customer is right, instead of defending your employee? So that I always found that would be way more beneficial to the business long term. So the employee feels like he's being supported, and then that way he even like treat customers better in the future. And yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that, on like customer is always right versus also having the back of your employees.
Yeah, well, the customer is always right, and but the thing is, sometimes you can't take care of everyone because they want something that you really don't deliver, and instead of telling them to go somewhere else, we implemented at Zappos that we would try to find a solution. If we didn't have their shoe, we'd call 2 other places that were around their area, like Macy's or Penny's or whatever, to find the shoe that they had. And then we'd come back and say, hey, I know we can't do it, and we've created a solution for you. And some of these people say, well, why did you do that? And it's like, well, who are you going to come back to? And it's like, you guys, right? You guys are buffing me out. You didn't have to. You sent me to a competitor. So what I advocate working with companies, for certain things, there's some places you can send people that will give them exactly what they want. Like if you're selling software and they want custom software, you just can't do it, but you offer them a solution because that's what you really want to do. Then you can usually keep them as a customer instead of just saying, hey, we're not going to do it, because there's a lid for every pot. It's just you don't want to piss somebody off or upset a customer when he'll get it somewhere, and if you're in that ecosystem, you should know where he could get it.
So yeah, that would be totally.
When you're like, I think it could be argued that when you have a culture in place and you have a business structure in place and you have your product and it's all going great and you're growing and people are making money, have more freedom, your culture's adapting, you have these big campuses now, especially the tech, they went from cubicles, sky-high buildings, now we have these campuses that look a lot like a college.
Right.
So that's all great, but how many contingencies do you have to build into your culture so when that all goes out the wayside in an economic crash or some sort of acquisition, how do you deal with keeping morale up and keeping the culture in place to ride out that roughness?
Right. You got to keep it strong, as strong as you can. And sometimes through hard times when you have to go ahead and let some people go, it's really tough. So you have everybody, in the group saying, hey, this is what we should do. And let's reach out to all our friends and all that kind of stuff. So you have like a contingency plan. But, in life, sometimes things have to happen. At the .com crash in 2000 that I lived through in the Bay Area, and it was a ghost town, for even my clinic for a while. It's just like everything at Shoreline was just shut down, and it was brutal. NASDAQ, I think, lost like 85% of the value, and it's like it was devastation. And sometimes you have to do what you have to do, very difficult situations, and they're really hard to prepare for. But keeping the culture strong, and some people will come in and try to mess with your culture, but it's like they usually deselect themselves because people, if it's strong enough and you're engaged and you're taken care of and acknowledged and recognized by the leadership and your peers and so forth, that they'll defend that culture. So that's really the only way. But some people get to so big that they don't really care, which is unfortunate.
I'm saying that you have to get into the minds of the employees to feel the same way that you are feeling about the business you are trying to build, right? So this is very important for startups and small businesses to just be in contact with each other to a same objective, that is this vision that you have, right? And being everyone on harmony into working for a specific objective.
Yep, exactly. And usually with a startup too, what I found, between 25 and 50 employees, once you get to that level, because with a startup and there's only like 10 people, everybody's hearing what the founder and the CEO or whatever, just the founder is saying. So everybody knows what's going on, what the culture is, type of thing. And it kind of evolves as you go. But after like 50, you really have to go ahead and articulate it, write it down, have it on mouse pads or whatever you want to do, and then have it on your daily. So as people come on board, they don't just sit at their desk and they go, God, everybody's busy, but I don't know really what's going on here. So yeah.
If I'm a CEO of a company and I start having, let's say, 20 employees, 30 employees, would you recommend hiring in at least a consultant for psychology or sociology or something like that to help you with that? Or like what person you think will be a good fit to kind of like consult you and guide you through how to create a culture for your company and how to put that into metrics that can be understood and replicated?
Don't know. You can hire me, but I've done that a lot. But or read the book. I mean, that's what I made it for, to do it yourself. But yeah, and here's the challenge too. After we created a great culture at Zappos, a lot of people came through, and then a lot of companies. I mean, I met with hundreds of CEOs, and they wanted this and that, and they wanted a chief culture officer, and it's like, when you have a chief culture officer, they may be responsible for the culture, but then all the employees think that culture officer is responsible for the culture instead of them. Okay. And so what I've found is a chief culture officer could be fantastic, but in most cases, the culture is not as good because it's like that's the person who has to do it, not us. And so I don't advocate for that. So, but to get somebody to get you started and then just go ahead and keep fostering it. It's like when, you have a kid growing in your house, you keep doing the right thing, you give them the love and, that type of stuff, just treat them like they matter, right?
I wanted to ask you about your going back in time when you opened your clinic
Mhm.
and you were having trouble bringing people in.
Yeah.
You were the best at what you did,
Yeah.
but maybe the business side of it wasn't there yet.
Yep.
And you started applying. You got this advice from a friend of yours
Yep.
to start looking for those unique values, right?
Yep.
Those unique factors and values.
Yep.
Could you give us those specific things that you started changing in your own clinic
Yeah.
that started bringing people, and how you ended up coaching at Zappos? How was that? Who was that person that brought you in?
Okay. Well, when I started after a couple of years in chiropractic, you know, I did a lot of good. I was one of the best adjusters. I kept on going to seminars, learning the best techniques to take care of patients. But I wasn't really that successful after a couple of years. I had to get another loan, and it's like, man, something's got to happen. So I got in touch with Kirby Landis and Charlie Ward, and they had a practice management. And I talked to them, and they said, hey, you have to have a unique factor or a wow factor. And I said, what? And they go, you have to be different about something. And it's like, well, I do this, you know, this technique and this technique. He goes, yeah, but the patients don't know that, what techniques, you know, they don't know the difference. So you got to choose something else. So it took me a little bit of time, but what I did is instead of one, I made three to kind of be, you know, more is better. And what I did is looked at what was happening in the medical field, dental, chiropractic, back in 82 when I started. And basically, you couldn't get a hold of the doctor. You had to bill your own insurance, which anybody's billed their own insurance and submitted it and worked with insurance companies. You know that's a nightmare. Yeah, and you had to wait for 45 minutes to an hour every time you went to the doctors, no matter what kind of doctor it was. And so I just did the opposite. I hired some people and created an insurance department. Every patient had my home phone number, and we didn't have a waiting room. We had a reception area. Everybody got seen within 5 minutes of their appointment time. And I opened up at 5:15 in the morning because I was in Silicon Valley. I took care of all the Silicon Valley employees, or a lot of them. We saw, you know, got up to 100 to 200 people a day, and the average chiropractor saw like 7. And so that's what being patient-centric was. And I had the vision that we didn't take care of the patient, we took care of the person.
Okay. What do you mean with that?
People are more than what they come in for with pain.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
So, yeah, so I knew the kids, like, hey, how you doing? What do you know, all that kind. So I knew everything about them, and people would come in and they go, how do you remember all this stuff? It's like, because I'm like present and this person matters and I'm going to take care of them. So I'll take care of the person instead of treat the patient.
And that's,
yeah. And then time went on. I had after 22 years, I said I was going to retire at 45, and that was my goal, to do something else. And I invested in different companies, and patient Nick Swimnern came in and he said, hey, I'm going to I'm going to go ahead and open a shoe store. And I go, great, where? Downtown Los Altos or Mountain View? And he goes, no, online. It's like, man, you can't feel them, touch them, you know, anything. Try them on. You're going to sell them online? I don't want anything to do with it. But he came back, and after a while, I gave him some money, so I seeded the company, but it was called shoesite.com. And back there, it was before Google. When you went on the internet, Netscape, I think it was, you put shoesite.com, and then every shoe site in the world came up. So it wasn't working. So anyway, we changed the name to Zappos.com. I spoke a little Spanish, so when he came in to visit one time, we did some stuff, and we changed it, and I drew up some logo because the lady that was doing the marketing, or trying to do the marketing, was trying to figure out a name and a logo, and she was spending my money, I think. So I said, don't. And so I made the logo, which is still used today. And then later on, Nick says, hey, you got to come into Vic and see what's going on, because it's like, wow. And so Tony became a patient. And then he put a P on the Zappos because I only had one P in all the drawings. And with the first, and he goes, it looks like Zappos. So he added the P. And then after I retired, the company was going pretty well. And after I retired, about a year after, I was doing nothing and I got bored. So I called, Nick, and I said, hey, Nick, why don't I come down and just, do a little bit of a coaching seminar for, a 2-day seminar for all the employees. I think there was not very many, maybe 100 or a little bit more. And if we just go ahead and do that, and just a little bit about the wow and all that stuff. And so I did that and then went home, and then Tony texted me and he says, hey, man, we took you to a vote with all the people after. And he goes, they want you to come down here. So what do you think? And it's like, I guess so, So, what's the title and all that stuff. And I originally said, hey, I've never worked at a company before. I've always done it myself. So I didn't know if I would like it. And you may hate me, right? So let's just I'll come down there for 6 months. Or 6 months and just work half time. And if it works out okay, then I work full time. So I went down there, and I basically worked with all the teams, departments, and employees. We wanted to make sure the wow was delivered in everything that we did, and the fulfillment center. And I met with all the employees. It was just a great time. But their values, their unique factors was basically, it was the same model as what I did. Is back in the day in 1999, it was 4 to 6 weeks shipping, and you had to pay a lot. So it was fast, free shipping. That was the solution. And when you went into like a Foot Locker or JCPenney's, you only had a couple SKUs of, let's say, Adidas. So you couldn't get the one you really wanted, but they had 500 shoes. So we would have huge selection. That was another solution. And then if you ever returned a shoe, you had 30 days to return it, and there was a restocking fee, I think 20 or 30%. But this was 365-day return policy, no restocking. So we just had those three things, and people would go, wow, right? Wow, wow. And so that's how that started with Zappos. And when I was with Zappos, we already got bought by Amazon, or we were getting bought by Amazon, and then Ali and Michael from Riviera Partners came in, and they placed our CTO, Arun. And they were talking to our COO and chairman, who is Alfred Lin, who's at Sequoia right now. And they said, hey, we're a 9-year-old company. We're doing pretty well, but who do we talk to about our business to get it more like this? And he goes, go talk to Vic. And so I was moving back to the Silicon Valley in Los Altos. And so I talked with Ollie and Michael, and they had a smaller service company, and there's 12 people, and they're in recruiting. And they wanted to go ahead and reach their full potential. And so we talked for a long time, and we came to an agreement that we work together, but we're going to have to be a recruiting company and a technology company, because all the heavy lifting done by the recruiters was basically broken. It took too long to get clients and so forth, or candidates to the clients, and so the clients had to wait. So it was kind of broken. It was all manual stuff. And so they're one of the most forward thinkers that I know, Michael and Ali, the owners of Riviera Partners. But they declared it, and we had to bootstrap it for like 2 or 3 years before we started the technology, because no one would fund us, a service company. And so we did that, and we crossed the Rubicon. They declared what they were going to do, and they just put blinders on and went forward, and we just kept nudging along the way. And now they're global, so they're huge right now. And it's basically, the market was broken out there, and so it became a technology. And one of their vision is basically not wow, but it's deliver the best service and experience, which is pretty much the same. Wow, yeah. But for a recruiting world, want to spell it out a little bit, And it's also, the purpose was to have companies and people and companies reach their full potential. And so that way, if you got a bad candidate and put them in a good company, no one's going to work out. and vice versa. So they had to do the right thing. And so that was our vision and purpose. And everybody came in, and they're like a global powerhouse right now. Just by seeing what was broken, committing to it, declaring it, and going forward and moving forward. So very, very impressive. There's a couple companies that very impressed by.
So we've established that culture is, very important in the success of a company.
Right.
And you have culture in place, you have achieved success. And the example was Zappos, you guys started to grow and you were doing well, and you'd come in and implemented a good culture and everything was working, and then you get acquired. My question is, when that acquisition becomes something that's going to happen instead of an idea, now you're going to be acquired, what is the process to make sure that the cultures don't clash and that the acquisition is successful for both sides?
Right. Well, the good thing about Zappos is Jeff Bezos loved our company, and he just left us alone, which is pretty rare. So didn't do really anything, and we had our own IT and engineering and buyers and all that kind of stuff, and so that was really cool. So we kept our culture, but a lot of times, you go into a new culture. It's like, let's say someone gets married, and stepchildren go into another household, that it's really hard to say, hey, we want to maintain our culture when you get acquired. It's just like a lot of times it just doesn't happen. That's the brutal truth, right? You get what you get.
That's what happened to Apple a little bit, right? Because Steve Jobs had a culture where he said that every product of Apple should fit in one small table, right? And then they started doing a lot of different iPhones with not really many improvements or anything. So they kind of took off that Steve Jobs culture.
Yeah.
Right.
I would, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, to touch on another topic, I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs right now focus a lot on short-term gains to have a service loop, feedback loop. So that is a mentality that came from the Silicon Valley, from moving fast, from releasing a product and then getting feedback from it. So I wonder how the importance of the short-term gain, the winning the sale, instead of how that compares to the true value of a business, that is keeping your customers and truly giving them value. Even if you mentioned that you have a case with an employee that was on the phone for 11 hours with a customer. So that sale was probably not profitable, but however you kept that customer, the lifetime value of your customer is still high. And even if that pure customer wasn't profitable, you still keep your standard of how you're just gonna be excellent in customer service. So, yeah. Right.
That's true. And then that person that talked a lot for a long time, that's what they do. So they're going to tell a lot of people that they talk that long, most likely. And it's just in the Silicon Valley, it's a lot of times they have to be fast because the technology changes so quick. And what I advise and what I've done, or some of the companies that I've worked with, is you get friendlies. If you're putting out, a software that's not all there, a lot of people just put it out there, and sometimes they put it out too early, like games. For gamers, they put it out and it's all busted up. It doesn't work properly. Why did they do it? And then they have a bunch of microtransactions, and it's like, come on, guys, get with it. Who runs this company, right? I think they go quarter to quarter because they got to make the mark. So, but if you just get friendlies and say, hey, you know what? We're going to be doing this. And so some of the customers you always have, we're going to do this, and we'd like you to beta test it. It'll be no charge but we'd like to go ahead and see, get your feedback, what's good about it, what's bad about it. And so you can still put it out there, but you don't want to put it out there and really frustrate and upset customers. So there's a fine line there. Some people just throw it out there anyway. My son, he's graduated from UC Santa Cruz with game design and computer science. And he's a big gamer. And he says a lot of gaming companies, they put out a new game and it's just riddled with problems. And he goes, I can't believe how these people do it, and then you have to buy weapons, and so whoever pays the most money will win. And he goes, it's just, who are these people doing? What are they doing? So anyway.
Okay. So this approach of giving to the customer, even if right now we're having trouble with profitability and we have to give out a lot, because at the beginning the reality is it's complicated for a business that's starting to give a lot to a customer in a niche where you're competing with people who are not giving that much. So in order to achieve that long-term success, how important it is to have patient investors and investors that you have good relationships with that believe in the business, instead of having a person who just wants to get their cash out quick in 2 years. Because I feel like a lot of times investment is so valuable that a lot of times entrepreneurs just try to get any investment. Yeah. So I don't know if you have any experiences with, or you want to touch a little bit on finding the right investor for your company to allow patience in the business.
Right. I think setting it up right at the start when you're talking to investors, say this is what we're going to do, and again, they'll either be aligned with it, lid for every pot, or they'll go, you know what? No, I want something that's going to be real fast. And usually when you get seed capital and so forth, you get money, and a lot of companies, they don't even tell the investor what's happening, until they go broke or something. But which is usually the case. But it's usually when they get a bigger tranche of money from a VC, and they'll put somebody on the board, and they'll start, holding you to task. And so you got to be careful with that, or just choose the right VC, that type of thing. But at the start, it's just pretty liberal, because you get money, friends and family and all that kind of stuff. And I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of friends and family that have invested in companies that I've been with, their 401ks are decimated, and their savings, because they invested with this person, but they didn't know what they were doing. They had a great product, but they didn't know how to sell it to, they pushed it out too quick, or it wasn't customer-centric, all that kind of stuff. And it's sad to see that stuff when it's such an easy fix if they just knew. But people don't know what they don't know, which is why I wrote the book and talk on podcasts and stuff like that.
I feel like that's one second. I feel like that's perfect, because what I'm understanding from this is you have to be very transparent. And we had our first guest here. Bill Riker, he spoke about how a lot of times as entrepreneurs, you don't have everything figured out. And VCs know that. VCs understand that. So I feel like that's why if you're transparent with your investors, it's a risk to take. It's a risk to take, because maybe they also are going to know that you don't have everything together, and then you are willing to say, okay, we're gonna figure this out in the future. So that way they're not holding you accountable for things that you don't have figured out yet. Yep. So I feel like transparency will be from the beginning for a lot of young entrepreneurs, would be something I really recommend.
For you as an investor, you've invested in a variety of companies that have ended up being acquired and being successful, right? I'm guessing you haven't invested in only those. What is or you've been offered to invest on some others, and you passed out Zappos at some point, right? What is that main issue you have with founders early on that you say, no, I'm not going to put any money into this?
Okay, good question. A lot of them, I've got burned so many times, but a lot of them, they basically say, okay, this is what I want. And I'll give you an example. They go, okay, I'm going to do this platform, and they'll show me a screenshot, okay? And they go, it's $8 million valuation, and I want this amount of money, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. And I go, okay, do you have any front end done? And because it looks like it, and they go, no, that's just a screenshot. And so they haven't done anything themselves. That they could at least get a front end, or get some, or maybe a little navigation on the back end, something, but they don't even, it's almost just like an idea, and they have this huge valuation. And it's like, it's not even, so someone could give you $8 million right now for the whole company, and it's a screenshot, right? So that's what I see a lot of people. It's almost like they don't know what they're doing, and they come up with a great idea, and they show you it, and it's just kind of like the greed, I guess, of it.
Do you think that also is a lot of entrepreneurs being forced to arrive to a valuation when it's too early to arrive to that valuation? So I feel like for VCs, I don't know how it works in the world of VCs, but A lot of times ideas don't have to have a numeric valuation because you don't have sales, you don't have revenue. So how would you approach that with an investor of saying, okay, this is the idea. I know it has a lot of value, but I'm not sure about how to quantify this to get the investment. So you think that is something that entrepreneurs should say, or that will leave them in a vulnerable position?
No, I think to know somebody that knows a little bit about valuations and so forth is helpful. I mean, get an advisor for your company. That's always a good thing. I mean, they're not that much. You just get a little bit of equity, but they're the jungle guide that take you through all these different stages and what to look out for. And because sometimes you get hammered in the VC world with guarantees and all the preferred stock wiped out with their investment. So all your initial investors get wiped out with their preferred stock with the warrants, and they put up all the risks. So there's a lot of stuff that you can really upset the past investors from. And so if you get somebody that can help be your jungle guide, and that's basically what I do with people, with companies. I'm the man that's behind there and watches things going on and kind of holds up the mirror and say, hey, what do you think about, I don't know about this. What do you think? Yeah, that type of stuff. So that always pays huge dividends because you can get snapped or taken advantage of really bad, or it could go a totally different way. Yeah.
So the customer is the most important thing for a business, right?
That's who you're selling to, right? Even if it's a company, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So at the end, you want to know as much as possible from your customer, right? And we are in a time right now where it's easier than ever to get information from your customer and to engage with the customer, because we have something now called social media, like Instagram, TikTok. So building a culture, it's about building a culture with your employees, your investors. But if you are able to insert the customers also into your culture and to follow up the same path, that's huge.
Huge,
right?
yeah.
How easy is to implement also the customers in the culture? How powerful is to implement the customers in the culture? And how powerful is social media to build a community of like-minded people that share the same values for a culture, and they build a culture from that?
Well, if you get the social media and have it, wow, and that everybody included in that culture and that group, I mean, it's just going to go viral. It's going to go really, really big. But again, have everything in it for somebody, you know what I mean? So, whether it's the customer or the employees or your business, all that kind of stuff, and investors, just so they want to spread the word, right? So have it, and have conversations. You could put anything in there. You can have, tell your story, all that kind of good stuff. And it just goes out there and it just starts gaining speed.
I feel like people like organic content, that they just grow as an organic organization, right? Like I like what you do, and it's what you were talking about earlier before that. It's how are they taking advantage of me, right? And instead of feeling that way, they can feel like, okay, I'm part of this, and I want to be part of this. I want to feel like this organization, like this company. So this is why I also think like culture in a social media way, it can be very powerful to build a community around it. And that has a lot of power, right?
Absolutely. And that's the biggest thing, because like with Zappos, we had 75% return customers every single day. So the thing is, we didn't have to do a lot of marketing. And one of the big problems, going back to like some of the founders I've talked to and people that wanted to start a company, they're looking for money, is I go, okay, what are you going to spend the money on? And they'd say, well, I'm going to do a little bit of this and, maybe do some back end and try to get that, at least halfway functional and get the front end going. And then I'll spend 50% on marketing. And it's like, wow, man. If you do that, you're going to be a marketing cripple. You're going to have to keep spending marketing, because the thing is, if you have something that's wow, people tell other people about it, and they bring it so it goes viral. So the thing is, you don't need to market that much. You can do social media, but you don't really need to market. So anybody that tells me I'm going to spend 50% of the investment on marketing is an idiot. Sorry.
But that's why I wanted to touch on the previous point of the short-term win of a lot of people. Okay, let me think about this client as a cost of customer acquisition, and then that has to be lower than what I sell to the guy. But if instead of that, what you find in businesses, that's just too big of a cheat code. It's referrals and people coming back to you.
Right.
Because then you just don't have to do barely any marketing.
And how does that come?
That comes from
when you wow them.
Organic growth.
Yeah, from the why and from having the long-term perspective of, okay, this customer might not be profitable today or maybe this month, but it's gonna keep coming. And I feel like startups so stressful, like business, like at the beginning, too stressful to think about this long-term. But that's at the end of the day what gives you the advantage, and you cannot compete against these advantages. So yeah, that's why I think. Yeah, if you think long-term, you will. Yeah. 100%.
So if I'm a company and I just hired David Vik to come in because we're having some problem, we can't get the employees to align, and there's just, we're kind of we're stuck in a rut. What are the first 3 things going into a company you're looking for in a situation like that?
What I try to do is I've done before is just do like a company audit to take a look at it. There's a lot of things that I look at. Look at the org chart. Sometimes the management has like way too many reports. It's all lopsided, or they have a huge mission statement that no one. You just talk to like 4 employees and say, okay, recite the mission statement. And they go, what? It's in the hallway, that you walk by every day. They go, I have no idea. So stuff like that. And then see what, if they have management or leadership, and see what the background is, what they sell, what they deliver, all that kind of stuff. And create something, or help them create something that will help drive and empower the employees, but help drive the business, getting the throughput. And then, but it's amazing that a lot of companies think the culture is, the word's kind of squishy. They think it's the tables and all that kind of stuff, but really is, I can't say the first 3 things because it's an overall picture. Okay. And just take a look at and you can kind of see where they're broken, and go ahead and repair those parts, and align everything as a blueprint, and then that's what's going to be built. Because a lot of companies, it's so squishy, and the mission statement, and so nobody really knows, and they can't really get engaged. They're saying, hey, work on this. We had one guy come to Riviera Partners, an engineer that was from back east, and I said, where are you from? He goes, I came from, I forget, I think it was Massachusetts or something, and I go, where'd you work? He goes, well, I worked for a government agency. And I go, really cool. Did you work on any cool code? And all? He goes, I was with the company like 21 years, and I was just coding every day. And when I left, it was never finished. I didn't even know what it was really all about, right? Yes. And so that's the kind of stuff that goes on. And
a really nice example of many people that are working and don't
have purpose.
No purpose. Now, he doesn't even know what he's building.
So you've laid out kind of the steps that need to be taken to address the problems.
Yeah.
And how do you go to implement that to not put employees, or a lot of times executives, on the defensive, and resist you?
Well, it all comes from the top. So the thing is, it can be green lighted by the CEO if it's not, or in the upper management. If it's not, it's going to be really tough to go ahead and get it trickled down. But you do, in a way, like if they don't really have any values, or they're not clear cut or whatever, you just go ahead and take a poll, Survey Monkey with all the employees. What do you think? This is what we're thinking about. And so there's a lot of feedback. So everybody feels engaged in the process. And that's what we did at Zappos, just to got it out there. So everybody put their 2 cents or $20 in, as far as giving their opinions of what would happen and what would work and so forth. And then we finally culled it down and distilled it down into, I think we had like 40 some values, and they went to 10, stuff like that. And
so would you say there's a barrier to entry in regards to getting a really good cohesive culture structured, in the sense of, is there a capital component that can be limiting to some companies? Like, for example, I'm thinking, and we're all familiar, like I mentioned, you see, Google is known for their culture, but their culture is heavily embedded in the infrastructure they have down there in that shoreline area. They've got, theme parks, they've got, daycares, they've got restaurants, all you can eat, all this stuff, bikes, cars, buses. So my question is, can you have a good solid culture in a basement or someone's garage, with 10 employees as you could with, hundreds of thousands of employees in a world-class campus.
Yeah, I think if it's green lighted, you can. Because the thing is, like when you're talking about Google, and Google's a great company, but they have all this stuff, which is great for the employees, right? Perks and the bikes and all that kind of stuff. And what they can do, it doesn't take a big capital infusion to change a culture, because that still can be in the culture. But the culture is going to go ahead and align every thought, decision, and action of the employees and engage them with a good purpose. Because a lot of times that gets lost. And so none of those take money, right? Most part, it's just basically coming up with that, which would take a little bit of money to get it imperatively, but you don't have to change the best. You don't have to really change anything. It's just you want the thoughts, decisions, and actions to be totally aligned and everybody's engaged. And that can happen. I've seen it happen. I've helped it happen.
That comes usually from leadership, right? Like that you need a good leader, because I feel like you have that much money at the end of the day, like at some point it cures it. But if you have a good leader with 10 people, the culture you're going to have could be, I think, even stronger than if you have like 50,000 people with millions to spend.
Yeah, and
right. If you are an employee and you don't have access to some kind of information from one side of the company or another, you are going to go home and you're not going to have new ideas about the company or think when you get home. You're just going to want to stop working because you have your duties, you stop, and it changes from being something with a purpose to something that you have to do. So it changes everything for every individual in the company. Yeah. It's not something small. We're talking about something that can really get a business to the next level.
Absolutely. And a lot of times as companies grow, they get siloed, right? Different departments. And there's no liaisons. There's no intercommunication. So one person's doing one thing and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff, like you said earlier, what do you look at when you go into a company? You look at that kind of stuff, the big picture. And then you can go ahead and say, okay, this is the deal. It's like I used to help with IMEs, independent medical exams. You just take a look at the patient or whatever and just figure it out. What this is it, And the same thing with the company. It's a company audit, the same thing.
And also, your leader has to walk it, not only talk it, right? Because it's easy to put it on the wall.
Or green light it.
Yeah, at least, right?
Yep.
But once you see your leader going that extra mile, then it's so much easier for a customer to follow that example. When your leader does things that's out of their usual workday, to just make your customer feel well, it's going to be way easier for an employee to follow that example.
Yep. My good friend my friend Tom Mendoza, who was vice chairman of Network Appliance and president, he goes, people don't care what you know until they know you care. Yeah. And so that highlights that right there.
That's the quote.
Yeah. Yep. That's the quote.
You can expect your employees to be motivated. If you as a leader are not motivated and if you're not going the extra mile, like Diego said, I feel like you don't show motivation to the people and in your culture. So like, motivation has to start with you, and you cannot expect things that you are not doing. I guess. I think,
Any other questions?
And one last thing about the CEO. Sometimes the CEOs don't totally walk the walk that I've been with. But the thing is, they green light it, and they'll walk by and slap high fives with everybody, right? But they don't go the extra mile doing some of the stuff because they're busy doing their deal. You know what I mean? Yeah. But still, they go, wow, look at this guy. They appreciate it. Cool. They appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay. And I think that kind of coincides with some other speakers we've had say where a lot of times you don't get one employee or one CEO or one board member or chair for that whole life cycle of the company. You have people that really have strengths and get in their stride at each, significant milestone in that progression. Yeah. And I think that works well with the whole culture idea is, the CEO you needed to get, your initial seed money and your first round of venture financing isn't the CEO you necessarily want when you're, at a multi-billion-dollar value.
Yeah.
And that culture changes as that also. It's a spectrum, because people think that, companies are, symmetrical. They're all the same, and you just bucket it based off of industry.
Yeah.
That's what they teach here for the most part.
Yeah.
But that's not true. In reality, each business is asymmetrical. Each one is got its own ecosystem and its own uniqueness. And you can't just paint with the broad brush. A culture that, works for one isn't going to work for the other. So
Right.
it's kind of that fluid transition that you have to nail to get it done well.
Right. And then everybody green lights it if you're going to transition it to something, right? All that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Taking it into words, I think also it would be like not in an external thing, but everything in an internal thing from the customer, right? Everything it's inside for people to change and improve with other people at the same time. So yeah,
to wrap up on culture, the one last thing, I feel like culture, the magic topic for today's podcast, the thing that scares people about culture, because it's often not talked about a lot of in entrepreneurship, and I feel like it's because a lot of people have analytical minds, and because culture is intangible, you cannot measure it. It's harder to understand and harder to change. So I feel like a lot of change in a company's culture and a lot of the expertise in creating it and modifying it comes from seeing a lot of cultures and like seeing examples and seeing things that like draw your attention for like a lot of businesses. Do you have like any advice on how younger entrepreneurs can really get familiar with like different business cultures in a sort of way?
Sure. Go ahead if you intern at companies or just go to their companies. And the cool thing is I've had like your question before, people say, hey, I want you to check out my culture. So I go there and they go, I got a great culture. I want you to check it out. So they say, okay, come at 11 o'clock, right? So I come at 11 o'clock and I go to the company, open the door, and I sit in like where the couch or chairs are. And 20 people look over and they look back at their desk. I'm sitting there a half hour, right? And it's like, what's that about? That's the worst. And they think they have a great culture. And then someone comes in, they go, hey, sorry, I was late. I was in a meeting. It's like half hour late. And 20 people looked at me. I mean, I'd never been there before. Instead of saying, hey, man, who are you, man? Or I heard you're coming today.
Or at least
welcome.
Who is this person here sitting?
Exactly. Yeah, so the thing is, you can see in a snapshot what the culture is all about just by seeing stuff like that. You know what not to do, so you know what's broken. So walking out to the companies and so forth and visiting companies, you'll see a lot of the stuff that's broken, and that's what you do the opposite, just like the unique factors. So that would really, really help. And, when new employees come into a company, what I've seen and experienced is they don't fit in. They feel left out. And some, they come to a company and they sit there and they told me, they go, I've sat at my desk. They didn't have my computer ready for like a month. No one even came by and asked my name. It's like, what's that, right? That's a bad, bad culture. So that's the stuff you want to do. So anything you've been frustrated with or you've seen that's just not right, then you do the opposite.
Okay, because at the end of the day, you need your employees to care. You need the people working in the business to care about it. So a lot of times, maybe young entrepreneurs think they're gonna fake it. They're gonna like find a way where like they're gonna act like they care, but they don't just really worrying about it. But like the more you think about it, the more experience, I'm sure you agree that is not possible, because then every day, like, we're imperfect beings, and in our everyday lives we cannot have the faking of caring with the customer. So that's why I feel like super important to get your customers to actually care, and we dedicated the podcast to culture. So hope you guys had a great time.